Hi, it's Caroline. Hope everyone's having an awesome Monday. For today's body empowerment episode, I want to talk about the government and weight stigma, which is a direct response to one of my wonderful and loyal viewers, Diary of a Bulimic, who asked, I wanted to ask if you could do a video on the pressure to be thin from the government. With BMI charts and fat labels everywhere and being overweight, I find it really feeds into my eating disorder and makes it harder to justify recovery to myself. What are your thoughts and opinions on this? Do you have any advice on how to cope when it's such a trigger and pressure? So thank you so much for your question. That is an amazing question, an extremely timely topic. And so I'm going to separate it into the two questions that were asked. What are your thoughts and opinions on this? And do you have any advice on how to cope when it's such a trigger? So first, my thoughts and opinions. So I took a bunch of photos on the subway recently because I started noticing I live in New York City, and I started noticing all of these New York City government-based campaigns for smaller portions, cut calories in schools, fewer calories, more choices, smaller portions, fewer calories. Another one I saw was 2,000 calories per day is what most adults should eat. Young kids need even fewer. So I don't know. What are my opinions? It feels kind of crazy for the government to be regulating food and portion intake. On the other hand, I applaud the efforts to create a conversation and awareness of health and well-being. So it's a really crazy balance, right? Like, for example, Michelle Obama has this campaign called Let's Move, and her website is letsmove.gov. And I took a look at it, and she separates it into parents, students, schools, and then a more section, and offers like 5 simple solutions on how to be healthier. And some of them are great, more fruits and vegetables, be active, move, I think those are great messages to send kids. The flip side is the shaming that is inherent with all of these campaigns, which I suspect is what Diary of a Bulimic was asking about. Sorry, I needed some water. Because I do feel there is this inherent shaming in like anyone that isn't having small portions, anyone that isn't cutting calories in school. Also, I don't know, to bring the school system into it feels kind of crazy altogether. The other thing that really concerns me, in addition to the inherent shaming of all this and like the exacerbation of weight stigma, is that there is no addressing of emotions. And I personally believe, from both experience, observation, and research, that emotions are very connected to food, and overeating is very connected to food, and unhealthy relationship with food is very connected to emotion. So why is emotion not part of this conversation? Why are we only looking at like smaller portions and fewer calories and move more, instead of go talk to your guidance counselor, go talk to someone if you're sad and you're eating because you're sad. Like, I think I'm a believer in intuitive eating. So to me, we should not be shaming each other for craving and eating sweets and candy and desserts. What we should be doing is having a conversation and supporting one another when we are eating those things as a result of emotions. I mean, when I had an eating disorder, I binged on apples sometimes. I know other people that have binged on fruits. So it's not an issue of the calorie cutting. Like, that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is that we have not learned to properly deal with our emotions, and therefore we haven't properly negotiated the boundaries and balance between emotions and food. So to me, the other thing that are problematic about these government campaigns is, just saying smaller portions. Okay, so what if a kid is like, great, the Subway told me to eat smaller portions, and then that kid starts eating smaller portions, and then that kid eats smaller portions than the smaller portions, and then suddenly that kid's not eating, and suddenly that kid has an eating disorder. I mean, there are so many concerns with these campaigns. So my concern, my opinion, my thoughts are, while it is while there is some really positive stuff being done on the messaging, on the conversation on well-balanced, healthy life and living and eating and movement, there are these inherent problems where we are not looking at how they can trigger shame and eating disorders and more avoidance of emotions, right? So these are not just banner solutions, and these are literally banners on the subway that are supposed to be solutions, and like, they're not. So that's my opinions and thought. There's a great documentary out called America the Beautiful 2, The Thin Commandments by Daryl Roberts. I'm linking to it in the description of this video, and I'm also linking to the Michelle Obama campaign, not to necessarily promote it, but because I'm really curious to hear what other folks' thoughts are on it. So I'm hoping we can have dialogue. And the Thin Commandments documentary talks about the problems with BMI charts and how, like, there's this incredible part of the documentary where they go into a school where suddenly kids are being weighed, and which is such a problem, and God, the shaming that goes on in that. I mean, and we always think of weight stigma with regards to overweight. People that are underweight undergo so much weight stigma, and emotional and verbal abuse as well. I know a lot of people in the public speaking that I do that have raised their hand to talk about how being underweight has been a source of tremendous ridicule their whole life. So there's all these sides of the spectrum. The America the Beautiful documentary has this incredible scene where they're checking the BMI of all the students, and this one kid who is he's really tall and really skinny, has like the highest BMI in the class. So according to the BMI thing, he's obese. This kid is like so skinny, and he's being called obese. So there are a lot of flaws in the BMI chart, and that movie does an incredible job of breaking it down. Next question that Diary of a Bulimic asked: do you have any advice on how to cope when it's such a trigger and pressure? Know that it is not, that it is coming from a place of propaganda, like it's an all banner solution that doesn't work. For instance, years and years and years ago, when I was really beginning my full recovery from an eating disorder, so I was in college, I realized that like Shape magazine, Self magazine, and Fitness magazine, I was like collecting them in bulk and always reading all the exercises. And then I was like feeling really ashamed if suddenly my butt didn't look perfect because of the butt squats that were in the magazines. And I realized, wow, my butt is different than any other person's butt. So why would this exercise be the be-all, end-all to my road to a perfect butt when I should probably be doing very different exercises with different reps and different sets and different like weights or whatever than as someone else? And I realized that there is no there's no solution for everyone. That these like mass ads, these, fix everyone exercises and things in magazines and ad campaigns for health and against obesity, just know that they're inherently flawed, because we are all completely different individuals, and healthy for one person is not healthy for the other. And there's this campaign, Health at Any Size. It's a great campaign looking into how there are people who on paper are seen overweight and they have no other health problems. Their body is just naturally that. So my tips for coping with it is much of a mantra as you can create in your head, in your heart, knowing that there's nothing to be ashamed of. You're doing nothing wrong. These are, this is the diet industry. It's all based on our hating ourselves. And what if we create a radical response in loving ourselves? Like the media and the diet industry wouldn't know what to do with itself. So I think avoiding internalizing those things, I know all this is easier said and done, and it's like said than done, and it's like, what am I saying that's new? But maybe make a list of those mantras, those calorie counter campaigns, do not matter to me. I'm going to listen to my body and eat what I want when I want and stop when I'm full and start when I'm hungry. I know that these are made to mass, create fear, and therefore we're responding to it with fear. And then we all buy these certain things, and then the government and, the diet industry make money. Who knows? Who knows who's in bed with whom for all these campaigns? But the best way to not let it trigger is to continue building a sense of self that is impenetrable to these outside forces. In my own recovery, I do a really good job of not letting those campaigns and the media stuff and the diet industry affect my sense of self. The stuff that I really struggle with is based on my character or other things that happen in my life that have nothing to do with my body. And so we all struggle with letting other things trigger our sense of self and put pressure on us. So I'm not saying I'm immune to outside forces, but I do feel that one area I feel pretty strong in not letting trigger me or pressure me is that. And it has been in building the muscle, right? The emotional muscle of knowing that I don't have to listen to them. And again, that may be easier said than done, but that's really how I did it, was not looking at those magazine exercises anymore and switching to the magazines that I do read are like the New Yorker and New York Magazine. I'm much more interested in those, in arts and culture, and that's what I focus on when I read magazines. I stepped away from the fitness stuff. So maybe it's just stepping away from those ad campaigns and diet things, and just when you see them, turning your head, walking away, putting your mind somewhere else, as you build the muscle that emotionally strengthens you to not let those things penetrate you or trigger you. And if any of this does make sense, doesn't make sense, please let me know. This is a really important conversation, and again, a really timely question. Thank you again to Diary of Bulimic for asking this, and I'm really eager to hear other people's thoughts. So have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll see you in the next episode.